Pete Alonso's running out of options. He's not going to get a big offer going into his 30s. And I feel like we kind of have gone a little bit sour in terms of what has been happening with Alonso, mainly because of what has been voluntarily been looked at from the eyes of Alonso recently. We know we talked about him rejecting the 7-year, $158 million that was like before the trade deadline in 2023, before the sell-off that they offered to him. He rejects that. Then he hires Boris the next offseason. He's looking for a bigger deal. We also had rumors that were confirmed later on after we went live last week that the 3 years, $90 million was actually true, that he was offered that, and he rejected it. So when it comes to that 3 years, $90 million, I think that it's more directing in between, the 3 years or 7 years that was offered that probably will end up getting the deal done, because we all know he's going to lose money from that 7 years, $158 million, 100%, unless, again, like we've seen some of these reports, unless a team out of left field comes in and tosses $200 million his way. Most likely he's not going to get that long-term deal. Most likely he's not going to get over $110, $120 million. Now, last episode, about before it was confirmed a rumor, I said this: 3 years, $90 million. Let's say that's on the table. Maybe I'd make another offer. Maybe I would, where you lower the AAV and make it a 4-year deal. Maybe I would do that. If you're cooperative with me, if you're nice to me, maybe I do that. When I said that, it got me thinking as to what would that offer look like? What would that possible offer be if I were to make one more offer? 3 years, $90 million. Now, for those of you who are watching live, watching on playback, watching in a video clip, watching anywhere, and you want to tell me that it's not my money to spend, no fucking shit. I know that. Hypothetically, if I was in the GM office, how would I give a final offer to Pete Alonso? Now, I put this offer, a first draft of this offer, on Twitter earlier this week. Most of you agreed with it. Most of you would say that you would do it. I did a little bit of a revision on it, and you guys, for those of you who do follow me on Twitter, you probably would know what that revision would be. But this is what I would give Pete Alonso as the final offer to get this thing done. And if he does not want that, have fun. Good luck getting that somewhere else. 4 years, $106 million. 2025, he is making $24 million. 2026, he gets a $1.5 million raise. Once again, he gets a $1.5 million raise in 2027. In 2028, he gets another $1.5 million raise. In 2029, he gets a vesting option of that same value for a 5th-year vesting option. That 2029 vesting option would become a fully guaranteed with 25 homers and 145 games played. Again, we've seen Alonso do that before, but again, this would be in a 33-year-old season, so you never know if there's a decline or not. Up to a possible total of $135 million, that would be ranked in total contract value 45th overall, which I think we all can admit that Pete Alonso is a top 50 player in the major leagues. 3rd overall in total value among first basemen. This would be a $26.5 million average annual value. That would be the 27th highest average annual value among all MLB players. The highest first baseman rank AAV among all active first basemen by $500K in front of Freddie Freeman. We know he's not Freddie Freeman. We know he's not Matt Olson. Personally, looking at this offer, 4 years, $106 million, it could be up to $135 million. Andrew, I'm going to go over to you. If I were looking at this from the outside, and I think you can agree with me, I am being really, really generous. Very, very generous. I feel like this is an offer that he can't refuse. And if he does, personally, I think that there's something wrong with him at the end of the day.
The AAV is fine. I just think you have the option in the wrong spot. If he's signing, again, the 4-year deal like we would expect, he's going to want the option after this year. I like the idea. Again, I understand the idea. What you're trying to do is this is what you would put down. And that's, again, it's AAV-wise, like you said, it's perfectly indicted. It's an overpay to an extent. But if he is willing to take the shorter-term deal, the option isn't going to come at the last half of the year, the contract. It's going like how Ant's saying in the chat. It's going to happen after 2025. And I think the Mets, if they are taking that short-term AAV, they
I mean,
want that option after the
I
50.
had that
Personally.
thought, but then we also made that point last week. I'm pretty sure it was you or it was Frank. I'm not sure. Why would he want to test the market when he's behind Naylor and Vlad? Like, that probably would be even stupider.
I mean,
I
yes,
mean,
I think I said it, but even to the extent that, again, let's say, and he's in a lineup now with Juan Soto, and let's say they add another bat. In his mind, he's still thinking, okay, he had a bad year. We all said he had a bad year last year, and the market's not testing him. What if he has, with Juan Soto either hitting in front of him or behind him, he goes back, hits 47 homers, and goes
yeah.
back over 120? That's what Boris and them are going to play. So I think even like I said, I would think it'd be a mistake to go back on the market. I'm not Scott Boras, and what Scott Boras is going to play is say, hey, you have Soto there now. You expect them to add another bat, and maybe they add another bat at the trade deadline, and if needed, or an Alvarez breakout hitting behind him, that he's going to get more production. And if he has a higher productive and goes back over that 125 RBIs, hits over 40 homers, maybe, and we don't care about the batting, and an OPS back over 850 to 900, he's going to test the market and say, you know what, it gives him the ability, or at least this is what Boras is going to tell the Pete. One, you have
But
the
would he
security.
reject that backloaded money though? Like, that's the thing. I feel like he would want that backloaded money going into the mid of his 30s. Like, it makes sense to me that he would,
Yes, and I just don't think, again, he wants this short-term deal, and I think the only way he takes this type of short-term deal is he has the ability to test again. That's just how,
Yeah.
we've seen it with Boris clients every year they do this. So again, I like the idea, and an option for the Mets on the back, I guess it's a vesting option, so it's all based obviously on
Yes.
Pete's performance. But I think any option later, or at least a way to get out of the deal, it helps the team, not the player. So if the player is going to want the option, they're going to want it at the beginning of the contract to say, hey, it gives them the benefit of, okay, I bet on myself last year. I had a bad year, even though it was still serviceable. If I can come back this year, go back to being my a couple of years ago self, maybe I can get a bigger deal with maybe a 6-year deal with somewhere else after this year, after a great year. So again, I just don't think, and especially how Boris guys are, it makes sense. I know the contract and the idea makes sense. I just don't think with Boris's type and how Boris structures his deals and how he works with his clients, even with Vlad and Naylor coming out next year, I still think he'd be like, okay, you can have a better year than Josh Naylor. So again, and he is better than Josh Naylor. So again, he'd just be the second best first baseman instead of the best. But again, it's just a wait and see. I think the player option for him in the first year, Boris would be like, okay, let's just play this game. Say, all right, you give it. At least you would give some financial flexibility, like you have the backloaded deal. So hey, he goes out this. Let's say he has another bad year this year. Okay, at least I'll say I'm not going to opt out and have those 4 years like you have the structure here, and he still gets his money, not to maybe the length he wants, but he still at least covers himself with that backloaded deal, with at least the ability for him to get back on the market.
Well, yeah, I mean, I understand that in that way, but I just feel like the way that this is lining up, it just makes sense that, 3-year talk about it, talk of the 7-year deal that he rejected, meeting that nice in the middle there of like 4 and then maybe a potential 5 years. I feel like that's probably something that gets it done on this type of market. When it comes to the overall of like actual salaries, I am counting Freeman as the highest paid first baseman because Bryce Harper was given that contract to be a right fielder. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Chris Bryant as well, I believe, is already considered a first baseman, but he was given that to be a third baseman, left fielder. Aaron saying this is a very fair deal. Easy saying if he doesn't take a 4-year deal like that, then fuck him. Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. Like, this is the take it or leave it deal that I would put out here, something that he can't refuse. Again, this is another good point. I am being overly generous. Like I said, doing that little, you meant a lot for us for 6 years, like adding that a little bit. Again, I feel like I'm being very, very fair here. And if he ends up not taking something like this, then I don't even know what to say anymore. Like that's where I'm like, okay, Pete, good luck finding that somewhere else. 4 years, 112 is also putting out from Kenneth. I just feel like it's really hard to turn down. Like, let's say if they put an offer like this in front of him, I feel like it's really hard to turn down backloaded money when you're a first baseman. Like, I don't think there's anybody stupid enough to do that, right?
Well,
if there is somebody stupid enough, it would be never mind.
I didn't
That's
say
offensive.
it. I didn't say it this time.
I did ask everybody on Twitter about if they would do that. I believe it was over 60% saying that they would do it. There was a small amount that said it was an underpay, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. Some said it was an overpay. There were a few that said, I'm not making any more offers to him. He can walk. So, I mean, as for splitting it up again, I think that this is the type of offer that you would just establish that this is it, Pete. I mean, if you're going to continue to surf the market here, I really don't think that we're willing to be as patient as it is being expected to be going into the later stages of January to February and then pitchers and catchers reporting. Like, I feel like at one point they're going to have to cut this thing off if something's not going to work. I don't think that they're going to drag this thing out to spring training if they can't get a deal done. I feel like the Mets eventually, David Stearns is like, okay, well, tick-tock here. Let's try to move this thing along. Let's end this staring contest because I got the rest of the offseason to go by. I've made 3 moves in the last 4 weeks. There hasn't really been much stuff that they have done recently. So I feel like holding this up in this way, it's coming towards the end here. Like at one point, they're going to have to cut it off and be like, okay, it's either you take it or leave it or not. And I feel like that offer is really, really generous.